WisconsinEye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
WisconsinEye coverage of the elections of 2014 continues with an interview with Assembly Speaker Robin Vos. He represents the 63rd District. He's a Republican seeking re-election. Mr. Speaker, welcome back to WisconsinEye.
I always enjoy it, Steve. First of all, thanks for doing these interviews. I've been watching them as you're going along the state. A lot of real interesting people who are running for office, so thanks for letting the public know more about who they are. We've really been encouraging all of our Republicans who are running for office to participate because I think it's a great way for people to get their message out and let us know a little bit about who they are.
We appreciate that, sir. And a programming note, WisconsinEye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and mental and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Mr. Speaker, are you doing anything different after June 10th, which is when the U.S. House Majority Leader Eric Cantor lost?
Honestly, I'm not, Steve. You know, I love campaigning. When I ran the very first time, I went door to door. I have done it every summer. When I had elections, when I didn't have elections, when I had opponents, when I didn't have opponents. We started it in April. I am going door to door every week, talking to folks in my district. I've been in every town so far. So I'm incredibly proud of the job that we've done and the fact that I have never forgotten that I am not there by any sort of right. I'm there by having to go out and earn it every single election cycle, and I'm proud of that.
What lesson do you think Eric Cantor forgot?
You know, I can see how when you're in a leadership role, you are pulled in so many different directions. People ask you to speak all over the state. You want to be in Madison because you are trying to help shape public policy. And it's not only during the floor periods, it's all year long. Every month, every week, things are happening. So it's definitely difficult to balance out going to the Eagle Scout ceremony at home, going door to door in your district, and also being around the state doing parts for your caucus. I'm proud to say that I try to go to those things. I think that's the part of my job that I enjoy the most. That's talking to my constituents, getting out there. I was in an Eagle Scout ceremony on Saturday with Peter Barca. So, you know, he's doing the same thing, making sure that both of us realize we're supposed to be representing the people at home first, and the rest of the state's our second option, but still an important one.
Well, I want to ask you the same issues that I asked your primary opponent when I had a chance to talk to her. Let's talk about school choice and vouchers first. In the next budget, should the 1,000 student enrollment cap be lifted for choice completely?
Of course it should. Yeah, we should not have had a cap to begin with. I think that we know that in Racine, in Unified, we have had school choice now for a little over 3 years. We've had a cap that went into place, and eventually the cap was taken off, so every family has the option, as long as they're within certain income thresholds, to participate in a school that's best for their kids. And now if you look at Racine Unified, they are choosing to make reinvestments back into their school district. They're going to have a tax cut for many folks throughout the Unified District because of what the state of Wisconsin did in our budgeting process. So for those who say that school choice costs local communities, the opposite in effect is what's happening. It reinvests and it reinvigorates a lot of what happens in those school districts. There are lots of parts of Wisconsin where the school districts are doing a fantastic job, and perhaps school choice isn't ever going to take hold because there's no need for it. But I don't think it should be government saying it can't happen. It should be the private sector working with those private sector or public sector schools to say whether or not it should. The only disappointment I have about school choice is that we were not able to put in a strong accountability system. As you know, the Assembly, Jim Steineke and myself pushed literally as hard as we possibly could to have a system which would measure every single school that receives taxpayer funds, judge them by the same criteria, and then ultimately, if they weren't doing a good job, they would be either kicked out of the program or have to dramatically change. We wanted to have sanctions in the bill. We couldn't get that through the state Senate. It's one of my goals when we come back, because the only way we can have a statewide school choice option for parents is if we have the accountability measures that are built in. And that's what I think we'll be able to accomplish next session.
Common Core standards, Mr. Speaker. Should Wisconsin join Louisiana and the two other states who have withdrawn or dropped Common Core standards?
Boy, I was disappointed we could not make more progress on Common Core. As you know, I formed a special committee of legislators, Republicans and Democrats, to examine the Common Core standards to make sure that they are Wisconsin specific. I think that the idea of having standards so that every single second grader nationwide has a basic idea of what they are learning is a good one. The Common Core standards, as they've been put into effect, I think is really a bad choice for a lot of Wisconsin. I would like to have Wisconsin-specific standards so we know that kids in every part of our state are doing much better than the national average. I don't want to have us dumbed down, which is really what I feel Common Core standards are doing in a lot of ways. It's not excelling and making kids excel. It's probably keeping them down a little bit. We know that there are federal funds that are tied to it, so it's not as easy as just simply walking away and not having any ramifications. We have tried to have the adaptation of the standards to fit our needs. We had bills ready in the Assembly. Unfortunately, again, they didn't pass in the Senate. We knew that they didn't have the support there. So we're going to come back again. But I think that some of the things that have happened in places like Louisiana, and I think Oklahoma's looked at the same thing, and other states across the country really are trying to showcase what we have been saying too. The federal government should not be dictating education in every single one of our school districts, or else innovation will never happen. We also know that the schools that have been in the choice program are now seeing the heavy hand of the federal government too. So if it's the DOJ or the Department of Education trying to write the standards, I think that's part of the problem that we've got, is too much Washington, not enough Wisconsin.
Just to be clear, a quick follow-up. You're not saying that Wisconsin should go the route of the state of Louisiana and pull out of Common Core, are you? You seem to be trying to find some middle ground on that,
Well,
sir?
I'd like to be able to say, first of all, let's take the standards and make sure that they are the most effective for Wisconsin. If ultimately that means we have to pull out because we can't improve the standards, I'm certainly open to that. But I don't want to start with that as the basic assumption. I think that we need to look and say, let's make the Wisconsin standards what we need for our state. If for some reason there's too much bureaucracy, the state of Wisconsin can't get it done, we'll pull out.
Okay, let's talk about health care. Why did it make sense for Wisconsin to tell the federal government, we don't want your money to expand MA, no thanks?
Well, we know Medicaid is a hugely important program for a lot of people in poverty throughout Wisconsin. When Governor Thompson created Badger Care, of course expanded by Jim Doyle, unfortunately we saw a huge escalation in costs and not the upkeep in time with how much the federal government was paying over time. We actually saw a decrease in the amount of money that they were paying as a percentage of the program over time, and that was during good and bad times. Now with the federal government saying, trust us, we're going to fund it at 90%, just take the money and you won't have to worry, we know that that promise is almost never kept. You name the program, from special education for kids all the way through Medicaid, none of those have kept pace with the times as costs have exploded. So I do not want to have Wisconsin sign a blank check for a program that we're not sure we can afford. The great part of what Governor Walker and Republicans did is we were able to expand the program to really take care of those who need it the most, people who are at the federal poverty level or below. As you know, before, in order to be part of the program, you had to have a family. You had to have a custodial parent and kids, or potentially you could have it where it was a non-custodial parent with children. But if you were a single person without kids, you had no access to Medicaid. Because of what we've done, over 90,000 people are now part of the program that never had an option before. And we know that those people who are above the federal poverty line can get huge subsidies from the federal government to take part in the Obamacare exchanges. Now, I think we did something that was really remarkable in the fact that, look, most of us, I don't think any Republicans have supported Obamacare, but we said it's the law of the land, that we had an election, the Supreme Court decided that ultimately it was constitutional, so the people who are above poverty go into those exchanges and work with the federal government. Now, you and I know they've had major glitches, but that's not the fault of Wisconsin Republicans. That's the fault of Washington Democrats led by Barack Obama.
I interviewed candidates in Janesville yesterday. All of them told me they want the interstate widened. That's very important to their region. Yet, you're well aware, we face a $650 million projected deficit in the DOT budget for the next biennial budget. Do we delay projects like widening I-94 between Madison and Illinois? Do we reconsider that task force recommendations which went nowhere, which would raise some taxes? How do we make up that shortfall?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, the frustration, no offense, doesn't start between Janesville and Madison. My frustration starts with between the Illinois border and Milwaukee. We had already decided that we were going to widen I-94 where there are huge traffic issues over the course of time between Milwaukee and Chicago. That was redirected to do the zoo interchange, which was a higher priority for some folks.
$1.7 billion price tag.
It sure was. And that's why I want to make sure that before we do anything, we keep the promises that we've already made, which is the I-94 corridor right in the heart of my district, where we have this bottleneck with 4 lanes and 6 lanes coming up from Milwaukee down, or I'm sorry, from Kenosha down to 4 lanes in Racine County and then back up to a larger number in Milwaukee. So we're literally the point in the hourglass. So there is a huge need for transportation infrastructure spending. We know that most jobs that are created are within 4 miles of a 4-lane highway. We know that Wisconsin needs more good paying jobs, and we need to have transportation to get our goods to market. Many people feel that that is simply expanding buses and things like that. That's a part of our transportation program, but that's much more likely called a social program in my mind. It's helping people get to work, but it's not about transportation. We need to figure out how are we going to fix roads, bridges, harbors, airports, infrastructure, which every single person in Wisconsin depends on to either buy goods at the store or to get to a job.
You've talked about toll roads, Mr. Speaker, but that's not really an option because that would depend on changing federal law that when I interview members of Congress tell me that's not likely to happen. So toll roads is not a solution.
Yeah,
is it,
it's a solution, but unfortunately the people in Washington don't seem to have enough courage to actually look and say, let the states decide for themselves. Now, I have met with our congressional delegation. I think that they are open to the idea as part of a broader package. We know that the federal transportation bill has to be funded by the end of the summer, or literally the trust fund at the federal level is going to dry up. That's an incredibly important funding source for us, so they've got to figure it out. But to just simply borrow more or to try to band-aid approach to solving the federal problem isn't going to help us in the long run, which is what we've got to do here in Wisconsin. We've got to have long-term answers.
That task force 2 years ago recommended an increase in the gas tax, and when you and I send in our $75, tell them how many miles we've driven. Are you willing to consider either of those, sir?
Well, the first thing they want to do is to study all the options. I have tried to keep ideas for increased revenue on the table throughout this process. My first preference, yes, is tolling. It's the only one that if you look at the Marquette poll and the polls that have been done throughout Wisconsin, has the majority support of the public. People do not mind paying for the roads that they use. When I talk to people who are on county or local roads, they see the potholes. They see the need for reconstruction all across the state, especially after a tough winter. So I want to keep all those options on the table. A $650 million deficit is huge. But that's the discussion we've got to have when we come back. Governor Walker, I know, has said he wants to lead on this topic, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he proposes. But I am trying to keep everything on the table. My preference would not be to raise the gas tax if we can help it. My preference would not be to have massive increases in registration. But I think that potentially one of those could be on the table. I would also say, though, that I'd like to keep tolling on the table as at least an option, because it's one where the federal government doesn't have to raise the federal gas tax and then redistribute the wealth. It just says let you keep the money that you're generating right in your state.
I'm asking every candidate this because it's such a timely issue. What's your reaction to Judge Krebs' ruling on same-sex marriage, sir?
Well, I'm disappointed that one individual judge decided to put her opinion in place of the voters of Wisconsin. In 2006, we had a referendum that was supported broadly across the state. Almost every single county, same-sex marriage was defined as being between one man and one woman. I think that if societal changes are going to happen, they should be done through elected officials, not through lifetime appointed judges. That's my biggest disappointment with the way that it happened. The people were very loud in speaking. Elected officials understood the consequences of that, which is why we tried to find some middle ground. We didn't repeal civil unions, which could have easily happened when Republicans took control, because we thought we had found that happy medium to make sure who wants to visit their loved one in a hospital could still do so, but they wouldn't qualify for preferential tax treatment, which in many ways is what this argument's all about. So I thought we had found that middle ground, but now a liberal activist judge, just like on voter ID, decides to take the law into their own hands, substitute their opinion for the 5.5 million people in Wisconsin, and that's disappointing.
What's your personal position on the issue?
So my personal opinion's always been the same. I voted for I voted for definition of marriage between a man and a woman. I voted yes in 2006. I voted to put it on the ballot. My opinion has not changed today. Now, should we be tolerant? Should we allow individuals who have different needs to be able to access things like visiting somebody at the hospital or right of survivorship? Some of those things I'm definitely open to, but the idea of trying to redefine a cultural institution which has literally been around longer than men and women have been is something that really is disappointing when one individual gets to put their opinion in the middle.
Two candidates for Attorney General say first offense OWI should be a crime. Should it?
No.
Okay. And then also the minimum wage issue being debated in Washington and Corey Mason's bill and Senator Wirch's bill. You do not oppose you do not favor raising the minimum wage.
That's correct, and it's simple because I care about low-wage workers, not about the politics. The politics are easy. To take a vote to raise everybody's wages, I see why Democrats demagogue it to death because they think that they are helping people who are just starting out. The vast majority of people who start out with minimum wage are somebody who works their first job. They're getting their first experience in the workplace. God knows today not enough high school kids are able to work because society's changed. A lot of times we're choosing to put other people in those positions instead of high school kids to get their first chance. Raising that minimum wage is going to do nothing more than to drive even more people out of the workplace. Studies have shown it's going to cost Wisconsin tens of thousands of jobs. We also know that when you look at the basic idea, if I can buy a piece of equipment and it will never be sick, never has to worry about showing up for work on time, never takes a vacation, and over time that pays for itself much quicker than it would be by raising the minimum wage. People are going to choose technology, and that's going to put even more people out of work. So I would prefer to do things to make sure that we have more jobs that are out there, period, and the marketplace will raise wages. That's what's already happening. It's hard to find somebody that you can hire for minimum wage. Trust me, I'm in the process of hiring people at my factory right now. You can't find them for minimum wage. So that's what the marketplace does much better than government ever could.
Finally, I want to give you a chance to highlight any differences between you and your primary challenger on August 12th.
You know, I have not met my primary opponent personally, but I'm sure she's a good person. I watched her WisconsinEye interview. I know she's passionate. I think that she probably sees the same frustration that I do all across the country, where people want to have an opportunity to have smaller government, more individual freedom, more opportunity for entrepreneurs to succeed. I think perhaps she chose the wrong vehicle. I think that for my district, I hope I do a good job. I hope that I listen well. I'm out there trying to talk to folks every day, listening what they want. I do some special things. I try to call back constituents personally, so I have that one-on-one contact with folks. So, you know, I understand her passion. I respect her for it. I just think that my experience, having been the speaker and hopefully being the speaker again next session to deliver for Racine County, to deliver for the conservative principles that we share, is something that hopefully most people in my district will support.
Thank you. Assembly Speaker Robin Voss is a Republican seeking re-election in the 63rd Assembly District. He's from Rochester. Mr. Speaker, thanks for returning to WisconsinEye.
I always enjoy it. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you.